YouTube, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 8 articles in this episode for you. Are in the description of the video for your convenience. The first one here is off a BizPack review. It says, story totally wrong when it comes to the mother of all bombs. Bomb U.S. forces dropped Thursday on an ISIS training camp in Afghanistan did not cost $13 million to develop, or $16 million per unit, as reported by the multiple news outlets. About the cost of mother of all bombs relied on a misreading of a 2011 article or a dubious internet InfoWars once quoted with healthy bit of skepticism. The cost of the bomb is unknown. The actual cost of the program isn't publicly available because the mother of all bombs, officially known as the GBU-43, Ordnance Air Blast, by the military and not a private defense company. In fact, the Air Force doesn't even keep track of their per unit cost program as a whole because it is not manufactured privately. Cost per unit for the Moab, Air Force spokesman and told the Daily Caller News Foundation, these produced in-house, so we don't have a standard procurement cost associated with them. The Air Force mostly used existing technologies and hardware for the first Moab prototypes and never contracted out the full production of the bomb, so they did not need to itemize and add the cost of each weapon component, the DCNF. Many reports Thursday, including the USA Today, the Washington Examiner, CNBC, and others, claimed the Moab cost $314 to develop. 11 Los Angeles Times report. Estimates in that article, however, only refer to the cost of the Air Force's biggest bomb, the 5,300-pound massive ordnance penetrator, or the MOP, they call it. U-57, private defense contractor Boeing Company, cost of about $314 million. The military has developed and ordered 20 of the GPS-guided bombs called Massive Ordnances Penetrators, the LA Times report says. Get this to scroll up a little bit. There we go. Snowden put out a tweet, says the bomb dropped today in the middle of Afghanistan cost $14 the nib. The two are related, they serve different functions. The MOP is designed to destroy underground bunkers as deep as 200 feet below the surface, while the wipes out everything on the surface within radius. Like its daisy cutter predecessor, can only be dropped out of a C-130 built by Lockheed Martin, and the MOP from a B-2. Many news organizations, including CNBC, also cited Deagle, I guess it's pronounced, Deagle.com, a site with extensive lists of weapons assets owned by multiple countries. Web cost $16 million per unit, the same amount as the report cost of the MOP. No source to verify its information. The site's IP is registered to an address, and the press they've received was for a 2015 prediction that the U.S. population would drop by more than 80% by 2025 due to an economic and cultural collapse. It's set to be far worse than the Soviet Union's. InfoWars wrote this disclaimer when it wrote up Deagle's report. We published this report with some hesitation and healthy bit of skepticism, yet find it compelling enough given the current global environment that it may be of interest to readers. Did award at least one contract in the development of the bomb to Dynetics, a defense contractor in Alabama, for design of the bomb's guidance system, sum of $35,000. The Moab was developed rapidly leading up to the Iraqi War in 2002, based on the BLU-82B Daisy Cutter used to clear helicopter landing sites in jungles during the Vietnam War. Air Force Research Laboratory ordered design concepts for a 21 weapon system called the Massive Ordnance Air Blast in April of 2002, according to a 2014 report Dynetics delivered on appropriations. Dynetics then partnered with the Air Force to build and test of the Moab in 2003. Miles Belgian Air Force Base in Florida that day would have been able to see a giant mushroom cloud on the horizon at 1 p.m. And produced more than 10 weapons and delivered them between April and May, according to a Senate report after the successful test. The rapid development of the weapon could have cost more than $1 million. Every technical glitch or roadblock we encountered was worked out, Robert Hammock, who led the detail team for the AFRL, said in an Air Force history of the Moab. Our team was filled with engineers and other people with deeply important necessary to pull this off, he says. It is reportedly constructed McAllister Army Ammunition Plant in Oklahoma. McAllister could not confirm that to the DCNF. The fact that the bomb was never used during the Iraq War doesn't mean they didn't have an effect, according to the Air Force. The most amazing thing about the Moab is its most powerful bomb ever built and has done its job simply because they know about it, Hammock said. The next article that I have for you is also about the Moab. It's from foxnews.com. It says, Mother of all bomb, 36 Islamic State militants, Afghan officials say. And this, if you want to pull it up to see that. It says, Afghan officials said 36 militants were killed when the U.S. dropped the mother of all bombs on a tunnel complex on Thursday. The Afghanistan Military of Defense a statement Friday that there were no civilian casualties and that several Islamic State caves and ammunition caches. The GBU-43B, a 21 conventional bomb, was deployed in close to the Afghan-Pakistan border. The Moab, or the Massive Ordnance Air Blast, is also known as the mother of all bombs. Tested in 2003, but used in combat before Thursday. Told media Thursday afternoon that this was another successful mission, military total authorization. Spokesman Adam Stump said the bomb had been in Afghanistan some time ago for potential use. The bomb explodes in the air pressure that can make tunnels and other structures collapse. Used at the start of an offensive to soften up the enemy infrastructure and morale. Losses have mounted EDs, bunkers, and tunnels to thicken their defense. General John Nicholson, commander of the U.S. forces in Afghanistan, said in a statement, "This is the right munition to reduce these obstacles and maintain the momentum of our offensive against ISIS." Moab had to be dropped out of the back of a U.S. Air Force C-130 cargo plane due to its massive size. The back door, one U.S. official told Fox News. Shinwan, the governor of Achin District, this attack was carried out in a remote mountainous area with no civilian homes nearby. He said there has been heavy fighting in the area in recent weeks between Afghan forces and ISIS militants. Age 50, a resident of Achin District, where the attack took place, welcomed the attack on ISIS, saying, "I want 100 times more bombings on this group." Came just days after a Green Beret was killed fighting ISIS in. However, defense official told Fox News the bombing had a casualty. It was the right weapon for the right target, and not in retaliation, the official said. It estimates that between 600 to 800 ISIS fighters are present in Afghanistan, mostly in Nangarhar, concentrated heavily on combating them while also supporting Afghan forces battling the Taliban. A company of nearly 150 Army Rangers killed hundreds of ISIS fighters in Nangarhar. Rangers were shot. Some weapons and equipment, including communications gear and rocket launcher, were also left behind. I have is off of BizPack Review. And it says Twitter meter soars to 11 when Warren demands Trump explain strategy behind Moab drop. Want her to run for president. Elizabeth Warren, aka, wants to know more about why President Trump authorized the use of the mother of all bombs against an ISIS tunnel complex in Afghanistan. On Thursday at a Salem town hall, the Massachusetts Center said, "We're all trying to understand what is the strategy." Now, I'm no militant expert, but from my armchair, the strategy seems obvious, so much so that even a lib should be able to understand it. On Trump to come in and explain himself to Congress before undertaking overseas military action, Warren questioned whether civilians in the area were impacted by the bomb, which virtually destroys anything within. Officials say there were no civilian casualties, but 36 ISIS fighters were killed by the bomb, along with enclave. Criticizing the bomb's use at this moment was Representative Seth Moulton, himself a former Marine who served several tours in Iraq. Make any difference at all. Frankly, dropping a bomb is easy, said Moulton. Aren't winning the Twitter war on this one. One puts out a tweet here that says, the woman is an idiot. Besides working in cooperation and teamwork, she runs her political bat crap mouth. Pretty sure the ISIS fighters they bombed were going to fight us in the future. This senator used it for other hate photo op. Another one says, tell Pocahontas she needs to pay her female staffers the same as males. No more beads for female staffers. They prefer money. Another one says, Elizabeth Warren has got to be the dumbest person on the planet, or any other planet as far as that's concerned. And there's a bunch more that's on the same vein here if you want to read the rest of them. Up. The next one here is off of BizPack Review. And it says, I'd bomb the S out of them. Trump reality checks the left by doing exactly what he said he'd do. There is harsh language in this. Years of Obama's limp-wristed foreign policy, the world is waking to what a red line actually looks like. But hey, it's not as tough as people, or try this again. But hey, it's not as though people weren't warned. President Trump told folks on the campaign trail as far back as November of 2015 that he'd bomb the S out of them. Here's a little reminder of then candidate Trump's preview with coming attractions. And they got video here for you if you want to watch that. Again, dropping open last week with Trump's approval for the 59 missile strike against Syrian military air base. That was capped off exactly 1 week later by the Pentagon dropping a Moab on the Islamic State tunnel network in Afghanistan. Snowflakes even complained about what Moab stood for. Reporters meant mother of all bombs. And one puts out a tweet that says, who did this? Who named a bomb mother of all bombs? Some real fella. Oh, for goodness sakes. Another one says, wait, they actually paint Moab on the bomb itself. Pardon my French, folks, but that's pretty effed up. The article continues. It says, sorry to spoil the fun, kiddies, but the letter designation for the high-yield non-PBU 43B device actually refers to massive ordnance air blast. Politics, loving liberals also complained about the cost of all that ordnance. An eyelash when Obama spent nearly $1 trillion on his stimulus that stimulated nothing but his ego, suddenly became budget-conscious accountants. See, a tweet here says, we just dropped one bomb in Afghanistan that cost more than it would have to pilot a basic income for 13,000 Americans for 2 years. Folks, it's also try this again. Folks also recalled Trump's let him eat cake moment last week when he told Chinese President Xi Jinping of strike while the two were enjoying dessert. Tweets. One says, later on Fox, an interview featuring another amazed interviewer losing their shit over how cool this is while Trump gloats about cake. He knows what cake Trump was eating when he dropped today's Moab bomb on Afghanistan. While Obama micromanaged the military brass every day of his 8-year administration, Trump had given the Pentagon the go-ahead to do what it needed to do to eliminate ISIS from the face of the earth. This reality check for the left, but instructive. And while liberals wailed, conservatives saw it for what it was, another campaign promise being fulfilled. The dust cleared, we discovered that the mission was a total success. Bad hombres were killed, civilians left unscathed. Terrorists were given that their demented fun and games are over. One puts out a tweet, says 36 ISIS savages were killed and 0 civilians. And instructive for Obama, who liked to throw the term red line without actually following through with his threats. One puts out a tweet, says, so that's what the red line looks like. Say that in Trump we have a new sheriff in town. We should just say we finally have a sheriff in town after 8 long years of being without one. The article that I have for you is off of teaparty.org, and it says, has had enough ISIS. Do you support Israel? Israel is our closest ally in the Middle East, and they need our support. ISIS was caught firing rockets into Israel's settlements, so Israel responded from an armed drone, killing at least one ISIS fighter. It was quick to declare a state of emergency after learning of the attack. Egypt should have been aware of these terrorist organizations hiding in the country. Egypt has been too soft on terrorism. Patriots, we should be grateful Israel is willing to take action. Finally, the world is starting to fight back against this vile organization, create its violence. The left would have you believe that Israel is a violent nation and that they should coexist with their neighbors. A person could believe that ISIS and their sponsors could ever live in peace with the nation of Israel. Thankfully, we have a president who committed to rebuild relations with Israel. We need to support Israel because they are the only reasonable nation in the Middle East. Are not murdering homosexuals or abusing women. They are simply trying to exist in peace. For 8 years, Obama has tried to force Israel to accept Palestine despite Palestine's aggressive and violent actions. Obama did not like Israel, and we know this because the last executive action he undertook before leaving office was to send this violent would-be nation $1 billion of our taxpayer money. It is important to remember that Palestine does not care for America or our great values. They want to take all the Israel territory from our most important ally. The Palestinians have shown that they are more comfortable with violence, and for some reason Obama favored the Palestinians over the Israelites. Why was Obama so committed to anti-American policies? Speculate, but it is clear that he did not care for us patriots. Thankfully, we now have a president committed to taking care of the American people. We have a president that is dedicated to making sure veterans are cared for. It is reassuring to know that we have such a strong ally in the Middle East. We need to support them as they push back against terrorists and hostile nations like Palestine and Iran. Israel has flourished in such a troubled region of the world. President Trump has shown that he's willing to work with Israel, and it is important. President Trump and President Netanyahu are great friends, and we've already started to rebuild a great relationship with an important ally. It is important that we support President Trump, and it is important that we push back against liberal. We cannot allow the left to influence international policy in the manner that Obama did. If we do that, America great again. The Democrats are furious that we have reestablished great relations with Israel. They are furious that we support our allies rather than turn our backs on them. Sure that the left and their establishment friends do not torpedo our strong stance in the world. The article that I have is off of libertynews.com, and it says China's national airline just suspended all flights to North Korea. There are no publicly confirmed U.S. military actions taking place or planned to take place against North Korea. Known and what is privately known are two very different things. And China know or believe appears to have them in a bit or have them a bit spooked. North Korea has started an evacuation of Pyongyang, for example, and now China's national airline is suspending all flights to North Korea. Airline Air China suspends flights from Beijing to North Korean capital Pyongyang from Friday, Chinese state broadcaster CCTV said. It did not say why the flights, which operate on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, were being suspended. CCTV did not give a source for its news report published on its website, and Air China could not immediately be reached for comment after business hours. The last flight between the two cities took place Friday, with the return flight to Beijing arriving in early evening, the broadcaster said. U.S. intelligence officials are saying that if North Korea triggers a nuke test or full launch, the U.S. military will immediately act. Reporting that 2 U.S. destroyers carrying Tomahawk missiles are in the region and heavy bombers in Guam. Last week, Pentagon announced that an aircraft carrier strike group was being sent. This would suggest that both China and North Korean officials might believe a nuclear strike is on the horizon. This, considering it is only act U.S. officials are saying will provide immediate and harsh military response. If there was no real nuclear weapons being tested or launched by North Korea, one can assume China would not take the action it currently appears to be taking. The next article that I have is off of RT. Pyongyang parades new ICBMs missiles in founding leaders' honors. And there are pictures of that in this article if you want to pull them up to take a look at that. Military hysteria. North Korea has marked the 105th birth anniversary of its founding leader, Kim, with a military parade in Pyongyang, where it, for the first time, publicly showcased launched ballistic missiles, as well as what appears to be a new type of ICBM. Hereditary leader Kim Jong-un wears a black suit and white shirt and a tie, welcomed his country's bravest as he addressed thousands of soldiers who took part in the parade honoring his grandfather. Under the clear sky and to the sound of the military band, dozens of military vehicles and an entire army of soldiers passed through the country's named in honor of Kim Il-sung, whose 105th birthday is being celebrated on Saturday. today. State TV showed images of the Song, I guess it's pronounced, Pukasong 2 Marine launched ballistic missiles, SLBMs, on the truck for the first time as the country continues to pursue an aggressive military and nuclear deterrent policy. In February, claimed that it successfully test-fired a surface-to-surface medium long-range ballistic missile known as the Song 2, which is potentially capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. Also paraded what appeared to be a new intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBM. It is presumed to be a new ICBM, longer than the existing KN-08 or the KN-14 ICBMs. A Korean military official told Yonhap. Oh Wyong-hae, the second most powerful official in the country, in his address to the soldiers during the parade, blamed Donald Trump for creating a war situation in the Korean Peninsula, promising to respond with all-out war to the U.S. aggression. We will respond to an all-out war and a nuclear war with our style of a nuclear attack, Cho warned to AP during the parade. The country's biggest national holiday, called for a Day of the Sun, came amid growing speculation that Pyongyang could conduct its sixth nuclear test, amid growing tensions with the U.S. President Donald Trump, who promised to take care of North Korea. The official told on Tuesday that an important event is expected to take place. Thursday, amid much hype and secrecy, North Korean leader surprised the press by showcasing a new skyscraper-lined street in Pyongyang. Raimong Street is that the North wants to promote on the an official at Seoul's ministry told South Korean Yonhap News. It may hope to display its nuclear and missile capabilities. Today's festive parade, Pyongyang urged Washington to stop its military hysteria and come to its senses, or otherwise face a merciless response in case of any provocations against North Korea. A heightened in the peninsula. Minister Wang Yi warned that confrontation between the U.S. and North Korea had escalated to such a point that a military conflict may start at any moment. The article that I have, and final one in this episode, is off of Zero Hedge. For the hamster to get her up here on the page for me. Here we go. And prepares for North Korea emergency. Gestionary actions. Whoops. Froggy there. Either too slow or too fast. Precautionary actions of North Korea's neighbors. The next 48 hours on the Korean Peninsula could see substantial volatility because at the same time as China's largest carrier suspend flights to Pyongyang, the Japanese government has asked the U.S. to provide advance if it is about to launch military actions against North Korea, and has ramped up preparations for emergency situations, according to Japan's Yomiuri Shimbun. The potential evacuation of some 57,000 Japanese citizens currently in South Korea. According to the Japanese publication, PM Shinzo Abe stressed that the region is becoming increasingly tense. U.S. President Donald Trump has stated that all options are on the table. It's a fact tensions are rising, he said at the Prime Minister's office after receiving written proposal calling for tougher sanctions on North Korea from the Liberal Democratic Party's Yamanati, or Matani, here we go, chief of the headquarters for the abduction issue. He added that if an unexpected situation occurs, we'll ask the United States to cooperate in rescuing the abduction victims. The Japanese government, South Korean peer, has asked for advanced consultation regarding any U.S. military action against North Korea during a series of meetings between Japanese and U.S. officials. The U.S. side is said to have responded positively to the request. It is because Japan would need to take appropriate precautions, given that, as an ally of Washington, it could be a target for retaliation should the U.S. military attack North Korea, although, in order to preserve the element of surprise, it would not be at all surprising if Trump proceeded to launch a strike unannounced. Video in this, if you want to pull that up to see it, it says the infographic below shows the Japanese government contemplating 5 potential emergency responses should a military clash break out between the U.S. and North Korea. By Japan's Self-Defense Forces, or the SDF, in the event of a local conflict, use of force by the SDF in the event of a full-scale war, Japanese citizens in South Korea, preparation for armed attacks against Japan, civil protection and response. And they have this inset here which shows in the protection and the preparation and all that, with a map and all that jazz, if you want to pull that up to see that. It says there are 3 main threats Japan would face if Trump launches an attack. In addition to a potential ballistic missile retaliation, the mass evacuation of thousands of Japanese citizens, and what would likely be massive refugee onslaught by North Koreans. Recall that under its post-war constitution, Japan is not allowed to have offensive military forces. Its Article 9 declares the Japanese people forever renounce war as a sovereign right of the nation and the threat or use of force as means of settling international disputes. Logistics should war indeed break out in North Korea. The Japan Times notes a North Korean attack on Japan would involve ballistic missiles. The Japanese government has been bolstering defensive measures against ballistic missiles, including making permanent in August of 2016 an order to the self-defense forces to intercept and destroy incoming missiles. There's also the concerns of an imminent evacuation. The issue that would emerge in a contingency on the Korean Peninsula is the rescue and protection of an estimated 57,000 Japanese, including tourists. The government started compiling an evacuation plan in the 1990s and has updated and changed it several times. The government plans to convene a meeting of the 4 ministers who form the National Security Council to review the strategy for dealing with this issue at an early date. Security legislation that came into force in March of 2016, Japanese Self-Defense Forces, or the SDF, to take steps to protect, rescue, and transport Japanese overseas. The Japanese government plans to use government-chartered aircraft and the SDF transport vessels for such evacuations, in cooperation with the U.S. military. A potential complication here is that the governments of Japan and South Korea don't really have the best a tension that goes as far back as treatment of Koreans by the Japanese during World War II. His allergy toward the SDF is still strong, so there has not been much progress, concrete talks between the Japanese and governments. A senior defense ministry official told the Shimbun, the Japanese government must also figure out how to cope with the huge number of refugees expected to descend on Japan Peninsula. They would need to be temporarily accommodated, but it is also possible that North Korean agents would slip into Japan, striking nuclear power plants, heavily populated areas and other targets. Shimbum adds immigration control procedures for those refugees would not be easy. So, in case airstrikes do begin, will Japan get involved on the offensive? Institution and a development that would in turn put both China and Russia on edge. SDF is supposed to respond with U.S. forces according to how a contingency on the Korean Peninsula would develop. However, in practice, a Japanese response, senior defense ministry official emphasizes the difference made by security legislation, which would permit limited exercise of the right of collective self-defense. Regarding Japan, U.S. coordination, the most realistic SDF activity would be logistic support for the U.S. military. The SDF is permitted to mission to U.S. forces and refuel ready-to-fly fighter jets, among other measures, in situations that do not constitute an armed attack but are recognized as having an important influence on Japan's security and safety. Shimbun notes that could result in Japan sustaining damage to a direct attack. The government would recognize that the nation's survival is under threat and permit the use of force by the SDF. Using the right of collective self-defense, it would become possible for the SDF to defend U.S. ships by counteracting attack them based on the SDF mobilization order. It would also conduct other operations, including minesweeping in the open sea to remove mines laid by North Korea. Another such situation, the government would simultaneously recognize that Japan of coming under attack while likely starting preparations based on civil protection law, such as evacuating residents. Ideally, all of the above contingency scenarios never have to be implemented, and the threat of a U.S. attack on North Korea remains just that, eventually resulting in de-escalation instead of potentially unleashing another regional conflict. Saw World War in addition to the similar development in the Middle East. Unfortunately, considering how long the neocon warhawks had been caged and prevented from profiting from an all-out war, we doubt this optimistic scenario deserves much merit. In this episode, more episodes to follow. If you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up. Media so everybody gets to hear the news, and don't forget to subscribe, and that way you'll stay informed. I'll see you on the next one.